Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the daily Rambam Shiur, 3 chapters per day, lesson 131, Hilchos Maaser, from chapter 1 until chapter 3. The source of today's mitzvah is being derived from Parshas Korach in regarding to the respond after the rebel that Korach was having. So God Almighty says to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Velivnei Levi Hinei nosati es kol Maaser beYisrael lenachalo." I'm giving to the tribe of Levi a tenth of the produce of Bnei Israel, of the children of the Israel, in exchange of their service that they are working in Ohel Moed, in the temple. The Sefer HaChinuch provides a very interesting explanation that given the fact that the tribe of Levi doesn't have any land of their own in Israel, and on top of it, God Almighty have chosen this particular tribe to be available always to provide service in the temple. So God Almighty took care of them, that their livelihood will be given to them bederech kovod, in a very honorable way. For therefore their meals are being catered, so similarly to catering services that provide the foods in a catered way. For that reason, the obvious question, since their Maaser, the tenth that each and every one is giving to them, is in exchange of their land that otherwise they would have been getting in Israel, so it should be given a 12th of the harvest a person produces should be given to the Levim. How come they giving them more than a 12th? They giving them a 10th, which is a higher percentage. So two reasons are being given to them. One, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, this indeed is a bonus to them, since they are serving the chamber of the king. Therefore they deserve an extra share, which totals more than a 12th, which is 10%. Then one of the commentators gives a interesting explanation that indeed, after calculating and taking in consideration the Terumas Maaser that the Levim must give after they getting their Maaser, so if you will deduct the percentage that each and every Levi gives to the Kohen after him getting the Maaser, and you will add the fact that the Levim are getting their Maaser after the 2% of the Truma was already taken, you're going to find exactly a 12th fraction, which is given to the Levim. One way or another, this is a particular mitzvah that, though that each and every person is restricted to trial and to test God Almighty, there is one exception. When it comes to giving Maaser, to give the 10th piece of the harvest and the product that a person is able to collect, and he gives it to the Levi. So according to the prophets, Ubechonuni no bazois Omar Avaya, God Almighty gives you the go-ahead to test him. If I won't be able to give you a flow of blessings, ad blidai, in exchange of the Maaser, each and every one gives to the Levi. Once upon a time, I heard a very interesting explanation from Rabbi Steinzal, Tzolav Sholem, regarding the difference between the Kohanim in Levim. Though both of them are devoted to serve us and in the spiritual service in behalf of the entire Klal Yisrael. Yet, while the Kohanim, their service is associated with lots of glory, Vekidashtoi, you should always prioritize him in Dover Shebikdushe, make it known, make it obvious, make it visible that the credit is being acknowledged. Yet the Levim are the one who always doing the hard work, and not much credit and not much glory is being assigned to them, which may explain this seemingly when it comes to giving them the produce of the field or the tree, the percentage to them is quite disproportionate to the amount that I'm giving to the Kohanim, while the Kohanim receiving about 2% from the produce, the Levim getting a tenth. Though the Kohanim are entitled to collect 23 additional gifts, where the gifts to the Levim is limited only to the Maaser. They don't have any additional gift. Contrary to the Tumo, that in addition to the duty that each and every one has to give to the Kohanim, the Tumo, the level of purity and the restriction to abstain from any possibility of exposure to Tumo is very intense. When it comes to the Maisois, no restriction of preserving the gifts in a state of Tahara is required. For that reason, there is no element of Kedusha, and it can be given both to males, females, even those types of female who may be considered Zoino according to the Halachos definition. When it comes to Maisois, there is no problem. On the other hand, the Kohanim and the Levim themselves, they are not exempt from giving themselves a contribution from their own products. However, they will be the one who are entitled to benefit of the products. The reason, because still there is a obligation upon each and every one to prevent any exposure to Tevel. So when a gift is not being separated, though he will be the final beneficiary of the gift, but nevertheless a separation must take place in order to remove the Tevel status of the fruit. Tevel is considered a fruit that the gift of Tumo and Maisois were not separated. However, the enforcement is not taking place upon the fruits that belong to the Kohanim and Levim. The reason, because it says, when you will be taking out of Bnei Yisrael, the Israelites, excluding the Kohanim and Levim, that no enforcement necessary to impose upon them the duty of Tumois and Maisois. All the limitations that are relevant in Tumo, as far as a person who is mentally incapable, or a minor, or a deaf person, or someone who is not Jewish, or someone who is taking without permission, so the same limitation that are applicable in Tumois, they are applicable in Maisois as well. The other restriction, that no way for a person to designate Tumois and Maisois from one type of fruit for the other type of fruit, or from the same type of fruit but different qualities, whether the quality, one type of fruit is fresh, the other one is stale, or similar type of limitation that we have learned in regarding to Tumois, they will be applicable to Maisois as well. There is a light or relaxed type of treatment in Maisois that a person is not required to be Maaser, to take the tenth from a mukov, a surrounding where he is in close proximity and present to the location of the fruit. When it comes to Maisois, lechatchilo, to begin with, he can take Maisois sheloi min hamukov, when he is not even present, or from one pile of fruits over another pile of fruit, which are not even in close proximity to each other. There's always a saying in English that it's always better to be proactive than reactive. Always to initiate something, it's way harder, but therefore the reward is way greater. We see a reflection of this concept in today's first chapter of the Rambam, when it comes to an individual who initiates and offers himself to take Maisois in behalf of his friend. So a friend of mine comes to me and he tells me that he is very happy to take the Maisois on my behalf. In such a case, I will presume that most likely he took the Maisois. So though he is not present, based on the assumption, I am able to access and benefit from those fruits. However, if I was the one who were appointing him, and he agreed to be appointed, he was a reactive, then I won't assume that he did his mission, because the rule is, I don't say chazoko shliach oise shlichusoi when it comes lekule. When it comes lechumre, I would say chazoko ashliach oise shlichusoi. But since over here the idea to assume such a presumption will be associated with akule, I don't say, unless, as we said before, he was the one who initiated and offered himself to be as a shliach. An item that is hefker, honorless, is exempt from Maisois. But not necessarily the status of honorless must be declared. Even if a person was witnessing an individual who is taking some of the fruits of harvest that are laying on his field, and he was not protesting, so the lack of his protest or him being silent is in lieu or in exchange of declaring the item as hefker. For that reason, the person who collected and the owner was present and he was not screaming and he was not protesting, this particular fruit will also be exempt from Maisois because it is honorless fruit. There is something very interesting that always we see a connection between the Tanya Shiur and the subject of the Rambam that we're reading today. So in today's Tanya, he speaks about two types of neshomis. There is neshomis Yisrael, that their shoyresh, their roots, is from the character of Chesed. And then there is neshomis Yisrael, that they are the characters of Gvur. Gvura, severity, tzimtzumim. So in Chassidus it's being explained that even amongst the tribe of Levi, Kohanim representing Ish HaChesed, and the Levim representing Gvura. For that reason, their avoido is given beshiro ubezimro. The idea of a song is the idea of ha'aloe, elevation, atnue, of elevating milemato lemailo. For that reason, we see a very interesting difference in between Turumo which are given to the Kohanim, and Maaseros that they are giving to the Levim. While Turumo is being given without precise measurement, can be and should be given be'oimed, in a general estimation which represent the Ayin Yofo, Ayin Ro, and if a person gave more than this, it's also Turumo even less than this, Chito Achas Piteres Eskol Akri. The idea of measurement, precision, is not relevant when it comes to Turumo, which is a property that belongs directed to the Kohanim. When it comes to the Levim, the idea of precision in calculating the amount of Maaser is critical. And critical because either way, whether a person gave too little is a problem, or whether a person gave too much is a problem. If he gave too little, the Rambam writes that since he has directed to the Levi less than 10%, so though that the Maaser is mesukon, which means it's already fixed and the Levi can benefit, but peiroisov mekulkolim, the peiros cannot be eaten because there is a percentage out of them that a Maaser were not given, and it's mixed with all other peiros. This is in case that he gave less. In case he gave more, so though the peiroisov, his own peiros will be metukonim because he gave Maaser plus. However, Maaseroisov, the actual Maaser share that he gave to the Levi, will be mekulkolim, it will be spoiled, since in this Maaser there is also chulin, his own items are me'urovim. So for that reason, when it comes to Maaseros, precision must be preserved precisely, or precision based on volume, or based on weight, or based on quantity. If he can satisfy all requirement, weight, quantity, and volume, this is the most ideal scenario that it is possible. But again, what do we see over here? How an interesting halacha that we're speaking about the how critical is the idea of precise measurement fits the character of the Levim, the way it's being portrayed in Hasidus. The second chapter, the Rambam discusses the obligation of Maaseros that is applicable biblically on the fruits only if it meets three conditions. First of all, it must be his own fruit. B, the purpose must be for his personal consumption. C, it must be after the final stage, which is called Gmar Melocho. For example, if his entire purpose of the fruit is in order to sell them, so then biblically he will be exempt. Or if the peiros are not his, because if he purchased them after Gmar Melocho, again, he is not obligated biblically to give. Another example, if those fruit have not reached what we call Oinas HaMaaseros. Oinas HaMaaseros is the season of the Maaser, and in order to define each and every fruit whether it have reached the season that will pre-qualify him for Maaseros, there is clear parameters that will define whether it is Oinas HaMaaseros or not. He gave an entire list. I will just use a few examples. For example, when it comes to grapes, the chartzon, which is the seed, must be visible. When it comes to figs, they must be soft. When it comes to cherries, they must be red enough. When it comes to tavur, grains, they must reach a third from their process of growth. When it comes to vegetable, it must be vegetable leaves. It must be edible. Before they have reached the oinas hamaisois, there is no chiyuv, there is no obligation whatsoever upon the person to go and make maaser out of those fruit. It is forbidden upon a person to sell his fruit from the moment they have reached the season of the maaseros to someone who is not reliable upon the maaseros, because by doing so he is putting a stumbling block in front of a blind man. In that sense, he is blind from his awareness of the severity of maaseros. In the third chapter, the Rambam limits what we have just spoken, that the season of the maaseros is a critical point. On top of it, not only the actual season where the fruit is ripe is necessary, but also the stage of gmar melocho, completion of the melocho of the job. Generally speaking, a gmar melocho, when it comes to grains, is when the shell is being separated from the grain. From until the point of gmar melocho, a person is permitted to eat aroi. Aroi is on a temporary basis, but there is a very clear and definition. What does it mean, temporary? And the idea that each and every grain that he is taking, he should consume it immediately. For example, if he takes a few grains, plural, and he puts it in his hand, so his hand become a storage place, which obligates him to take maaser from this hand. But as long as he is taking one by one, it is considered achilas aroi that will be permitted until the gmar melocho. There is a few more conditions that they are imposing the chiyuv immediately to take the maaser, and even though the final gmar meloche was done partially or not done at all. For example, if he is bringing the actual fruit to his house, if he have cooked them, if he pickled them in, or if Shabbos came in, those 5 items that were exposed, the fruit were exposed to them, making necessary and critical to take maaser out of the fruits. Thank you very much, and this was a summary of the today's shiur. Ksiva v'chasim etoivo, a guten Gebenstern.